guys, I hope everybody's doing very good out there in the YouTube world. Welcome to my riding tips and lesson series. This is going to be episode 14, so I haven't done one in quite a while. Last year I think I did a couple, but anyways, what I'd like to talk about today is skid turns. There's all kinds of names for them. Some people call them brake turns or power slides. I remember in the old days when we rode our BMXs, we used to do those. We called them power slides or power turns, but anyways, we're going to stick with skid turns. I'll show you a couple other ways to turn your bike around too. So I'm going to cover about 3 different ways. But first let's talk about skid turns. So yeah, let's get started. So what we're doing here, you guys, basically it's actually pretty obvious. All you're doing is locking up the brakes hard enough to skid the rear tire, and then that's going to make the bike uncontrollable. But it's controlled in a sense. What you're doing is putting the bike into basically it's a power slide. Well, I guess it wouldn't be, there's no power, you're using your brakes. So you're initiating the slide with the rear brake by locking it up. And then once you get that slide going, the way that I do it is I get the slide going and then I get about a quarter to halfways around and then I catch it with the throttle and the clutch while it's still sliding, and it's one seamless slide is what you're going for. So I'll set the camera up over here. I got a couple locations. We're also going to do some real world scenarios. So I've seen a lot of guys doing videos like this where they don't actually cover why you would even need to do that in the first place. So we'll set a couple scenarios up and we'll go through it here. So I'll show you guys where I'm at here in this field. I'm way up in the middle of the mountains here, by the way. It's probably an old log landing or something. But anyways, if you look at the lay of the land, you can see there's a bit of a rise in the road. And when I'm coming towards the camera right now, what the bike's doing is it's getting light over that bump. And you know, when you unload, like when you unload your suspension or you go over a rise, the bike gets lighter. So it's going to make it slide around a little easier. So it might be good to look for a rise like that, or you can just simply do it on perfectly flat ground and pick some loose gravel or something, nothing with too much traction. I would also say that I would probably just practice locking up the brakes, and just feel what it's like to have the bike go out of control, because essentially what you're doing is you're putting the motorcycle out of control just for a second, but it's going out of control to slide, and it's a very unnatural feeling, especially when you're going the other way and you can't really put your foot down because the brake is on the right side, of course, but you can still do it. You just got to have confidence. But I would suggest braking in a straight line, feel what it's like to have the bike out of control, and then start slowly initiating the turn, and it will come. So let's talk about the bike for a minute, you guys. You can learn this on any bike. In fact, I probably learned this on my BMX in high school, but obviously no throttle. But we used to, lock the brakes up and do I think we call it a power slide or something along those lines. But anyways, I got my mid-sized, dual sport or adventure bike, whatever you want to call it. But learning on a lighter bike is definitely going to be a benefit when you're letting the bike go out of control. It's a very unnatural feeling. So what I do is I get the bike into a skid. This has all got to happen very fast too, by the way. You want to get the bike into a skid, then you're going to briefly let it go out of control and turn it with the bars leaning into the left. If you're going left, you're going to kind of want to lean that way, and you could put your foot down at first to help. Most of the time you will, and then you're going to catch it. Once the slide's going and you feel confident to let the clutch out, you're going to, just like dumping the clutch and spinning the tire, like doing a burnout in the dirt is basically what you're doing. But when the bike's sliding, you're going to catch it halfway through its turn to initiate the rest of the turn. So, and make your bike as light as you can. Like, you can run your fuel low, you can get rid of all your luggage, and make it as light as possible when you're first learning. But I would suggest some straight line skid, just lock the brakes up. Obviously the bigger bikes, you guys got to shut your anti-lock brakes, ABS and all that off. And then just practice some straight line skids and feel what it feels like to have the bike out of control, because to learn how to become a good rider and ride in control, at times you let the bike go out of control to accomplish something. So yeah, I hope that helps you guys. So I'll show you guys another way that you can get your bike. You can see my bike in the background there. It's facing away from us. I'll show you another way to get the bike turned around, and it's along the same lines as a skid turn. There's just no skid and you're not on the bike. All you're doing is basically hip checking the bike, letting the weight of the bike lightly fall into you, and you're just dumping the clutch and letting it spin. You know, as long as the rear tire's spinning, it's going to slide wherever you direct the bike, if that really makes any sense. And I have to say, when you're doing these things like the skid turn and stuff like that, there is definitely a big level of commitment. Initiating the skid is not all that difficult. The tricky part is in the middle when you're catching that skid with the clutch and throttle. So I would suggest some of my first episodes, like episode 1, I've done a few clutch throttle control. You really got to have that down before, you know, when you initiate the skid and then you catch it with the throttle and clutch, you got to commit with the throttle and clutch, because you have to have the tire spinning or it won't slide. Like, it won't continue to slide. But I'll show you another quick way here, and this one's actually fairly safe, and it looks more complicated than it is, but so all that kind of stuff, you guys, like, that's horsing around like that with the clutch and the throttle. It might look like you're goofing off, but what you're really doing is you're basically getting good clutch and throttle and balance control. So once you have that, there's, you know, you can do all these, you know, pivot turns and going over logs, and all that stuff requires clutch and throttle control with your balance. And it's the same with the skid turn. You're basically, like I said, you're letting the bike go out of control, and then you're catching that slide with the throttle, and then, you know, you can put your foot down if you need to, obviously at first. But yeah, so I hope that helps you guys. Right on. So here's a really good real world scenario, you guys. Like, I guess the biggest question on, well, my mind and probably everybody else's, why do you even need to do a skid turn? What's it for? The way I look at it, and I'm sure everybody has their own opinion, but my opinion is when you're on a really narrow road, and you know, you pretty much got to get off your bike and do like a 3 or a 5 point turn to get your bike turned around. So that's kind of the reason I would do it. You know, if you're, and I'm on a really narrow trail here, so I'll give you an example. Another reason, like, I should also talk about like power turns or power slides, how you can initiate a corner with the rear brake. You know, you don't quite lock it up, but you lock it up enough that the bike slides out in the back. Kind of like the supermoto guys do. You know how they get their bike sideways on the pavement like that? You know, that's another way that you can look at the power turn or power slide or whatever you want to call those. But I'll give you an example here on this narrow road. You know, this is a real world scenario of if I was up here riding, I might do this. So let's go for it. So I'll do a couple different turns here, and I'll let you guys kind of, you know, you can go through it and make your own judgment call on what makes the most sense. So let's go for it. I should also mention this, you guys. You can hear the throttle. Sometimes when you know that you're gonna do like a turn like that with the brakes, you got to get on the gas and throttle hard to generate enough speed to get yourself into a slide. So just listen to my bike. You can see at the end there where I kind of did a little bit of a pivot turn. You can kind of hop the front tire around where you want it to go as well. Basically there I'd watch my pivot turn video, because all you're doing is a small pivot turn. Just hopping the front tire, you know, to whatever direction you want to go. So yeah, I hope that helps you guys out with your skid turns or brake turns or power turns or whatever you want to call them. Essentially you're just turning the bike in the opposite direction with as easy as possible. You don't want to expend too much energy. But yeah, definitely drop some comments, you guys. I'm curious. I've done quite a few. Like I said, this is I think 14 of these videos now, so I want to get some ideas for more videos. I got a trick up my sleeve too. My last video I said I had a bike to unveil, and I'll tell you this, it's a motocross bike, but I'm not going to say which one yet. So my hopes are to do some, you know, more motocross style stuff like jumps and, you know, turns and whoop-de-doos and things like that. Some of you may or may not know, my past background is jumping motorcycles. I did freestyle motocross professionally for 10 years. I did it for a living. So my background is flying through the air on a bike. But anyways, drop some comments with any ideas for videos you guys have. Hit the red button like this, you guys. Definitely helps the channel out. And yeah, I will see you guys on the very next video. Right on.